If you want to jump higher, one thing you should be doing is training your core. And if you've ever been to the gym before, there at some point you've wanted to have more visible abs. And if you haven't, then I don't know what the hell you're there for. Doing things like the crunch machine, that oblique twisting machine, and 5-minute ab workouts. Those are cool. Those machines are good for if you're a bodybuilder, but if you clicked on this video, there's a good chance that you're more of a jumping athlete. And 5-minute ab routines, those are just for if you just have limited time. And honestly, doing these exercises was never a problem for me because I was always a twig, so my abs kind of always showed, so I didn't really worry about that. But I'd seen all the 5-minute ab routines, all the workouts, all the sit-ups, all the crunches, all the Russian twists, things like that. But again, if you're any kind of athlete that is trying to jump higher, the type of core work that you should be focusing on is core stability. And there's 3 reasons for that. And the first 2 reasons I want to explain, they go together, is to, 1, produce more power, and 2, so there's less energy leakage. And so what I mean by that is when your core is stable, when your everything here is stable, hence why it is called the core, you are able to produce more force throughout your upper body and your lower body. Because when, again, this is the middle of it. This is the middle. So once this is stable, everything else can move more efficiently and without risk of injury as well. Which goes to my second point. My second point is to prevent energy leakage, because when you aren't stable here, there is you're not going to produce as much energy as you would if it was stable. It's going to be flimsy here. So when it's flimsy here and you're producing as much force as you can, 1, you're not going to produce as much force, and 2, there's a higher chance of injury, which then goes to my third point, prevent injury, because then when it's flimsy here and you're producing all your force, there's something in your lower back when you flex it. I forget what it's called. It's like a certain ligament. And, if I figure that out, I'll put it up somewhere. But that ligament, it doesn't adapt. So then when you put yourself through that much stress without bracing, then you're just going to, over time, you're going to do it over and over again. And then that's what can prevent the big injury right here. That it always adds up over time. It always adds up over time. Then boom, you get that injury. So those are my 3 reasonings, and to explain it a little better so you can understand, I want to show you an analogy here. You see this fan? You see this fan right here? You see how this middle part is stable? It's not moving a lot. It's pretty stable. Do you think that if this, all the cables were hanging out and it was flimsy and it wasn't connected here, do you think it would be able to spin like this? That is exactly what it's like when you are doing any kind of activity and you're bracing your core. When you have your core braced, you're able to spin like this fan. You're able to produce as much power. You can do more and more like that. You're able to produce that power a lot more efficiently. And again, if this was flimsy, you think this would be spinning like this? You think this would be able to spin like this? That is hopefully an analogy that can help you better understand why any kind of core training is important for a vertical jump. And not just for vertical jump, also for if you're doing any kind of squats, deadlifts, RDLs, doing those things can help you produce more power with your squat, with your deadlift, even like things like pull-ups or your bench press, all of that, it all comes from core stability, being able to keep that stable, so then you can allow the rest of your body to produce more power. So now with all of that said, I want to explain the 3 planes of motion of our body that coexist with our core that I want to explain and that you should be training in if you want to jump higher. So the first plane of motion that I want to talk about that you should be training in is the sagittal plane of motion. And this plane of motion, you don't actually have to do any kind of specific exercises if you are doing the right compound movements, because what it is kind of that forward back motion. I could show you right now. That kind of forward back motion, you're preventing that. And when you're preventing that, either you're preventing that while you're moving up and down like a squat or a deadlift or an RDL or a pull-up, things like that. Or when you're just trying to prevent, in general, your spine from bending too much or flexing too much in things like a bench press. So you want to be doing that when you're doing any kind of movements like that, and certain exercises can work that. You can still do separate ab exercises for that, like the ab roller. That's a good one you can do, especially if you're keeping that core stable, because that's the whole point. And then doing there's many kind of different plank variations that you could do. For most people, doing just regular planks is very simple, so you always want to progressively overload from that. There's different ones where you're kind of switching the dumbbells, or there's so many different variations that I couldn't explain in one video. But that's the first plane of motion that you should be training in. And the second plane of motion that you should be training in is the frontal plane, and that's basically resisting any side to side movement when you're doing any kind of activities. So the best exercises that you could be doing for this are any kind of carry variation, any kind of marches, or anything with a dumbbell to your side where you're trying to prevent yourself from tipping forward like that. Anything like that is gonna be very good for that. So that's the second plane of motion. And then lastly, the third plane of motion that you would do is any kind of resisting from twisting, which is called the transverse plane of motion, where you're resisting any kind of twisting. So if you ever seen the exercise, the oblique twist, it's where you have a cable like this and you're twisting. So again, that's a good exercise if you want to build your obliques, but when it comes to training your core and training for stability, that's not something what you want to do. One thing I would recommend is a Pallof press, where you're kind of in the same position as a oblique twist, and you know how it's resisting you this way when the cable is this way and it's resisting you. You want to keep that stable. That's why you're going up and down, so you can keep your core stable while you're doing that. And there's many different other exercises. Another example is the around the world. When you're on your knees and you have a kettlebell and you're bringing it around like this, what that's doing is it's anti-rotation. So that anti-rotation, it's keeping you from moving around too much. That's your goal with that exercise, is to keep that stable. Like with every other exercise that I was explaining to you, core stability, you want to keep that stable from doing any kind of twisting movements and such. So that is the third and final plane of motion that you should be training in if you want to jump higher. So to summarize here, the 3 reasons that you should be training your core to jump higher is to prevent any kind of energy leakage, to produce more power, and then prevent any kind of injury or pain in the future. And the 3 planes of motion that you should be training in are the sagittal, the frontal, and the transverse plane. So if this video helped you out, please like and subscribe. I will have more videos in the future about this. I hope I helped you out today. Again, if I did help you out, please like and subscribe. Hope you have a great day. Peace.